Young girls need to know when they're given a space that they can, with a calm, cool composure, make a point and negotiate that space. And they also need to know that we value their skills. Welcome to the For All Women and Girls by NGAAF podcast. This is Kenya's global platform, a forward-looking strategy space where Kenya's affirmative action comes alive. In this space, women of influence and integrity don't just share their work, they reveal how they do the work, driving real change, and especially accelerate the Beijing Plus 30 agenda. And key focus is this year's 6+1 action areas. Through this podcast for all women and girls, we are shaping Kenya's whole of society future, where we are looking at men taking and owning their power, of uplifting the community, the society, and standing as allies, and where every woman and girl is empowered to rise. And we are extremely privileged to have you today. Our guest is Ambassador Dr. Josephine Ojiambo, and I am your host, Viridiana Wasike. Madam Ambassador, would you tell us about yourself and the work you do? Thank you very much, Viridiana, for having me here. I'm delighted to be able to share some thoughts with you on this topic, the Beijing Plus 30, and the 6 action points and the +1. Yeah, that's very nice. And thank you for allowing me to share a few things about what I do. So I'll start from what I'm doing currently. I'm currently a research associate at the University of Nairobi in the Faculty of Science and Technology. Many women look at science and technology as a male-dominated space, but there are lots of upcoming women now in science and technology. And I am located amongst them working on the green transition. Oh, fantastic. The area of climate action, the area which, when you think about it, brings to mind forests and green spaces, but also with the technology, the IT, the sciences, the AI. So that's the space I'm in under a project called the Green Transitions. And then beyond that, and in that space, I mentor young and upcoming scientists, and with a focus on women scientists, and for special reasons, but we'll speak about that. Beyond that, I have other things I do. I spend a lot of voluntary time giving back, and I work with the Rotary International, and I am their representative to UNICEF and to the UN system in Kenya, and also on the board of the Aga Khan University Teaching Hospital, where I have a role in mobilizing resources for the University Teaching Hospital. And then beyond that, I do a number of other things under the heading consultancy. But I want to go backwards and tell you what I'm very good at, and that is the area of partnerships, stakeholder engagement, and resource mobilization. And a lot of this comes from my background having been a diplomat. I served Kenya as ambassador to the United Nations in New York. I also was a director with the United Nations system, UNFPA, where population is a centerpiece and the issues of reproductive health for girls, for women, and for men, and the family, looking at larger family health. And then from then, I had the honor of working at the Commonwealth, at the Secretariat, as a Deputy Secretary General. And there I was in charge of, initially, the issues of politics, the rule of law, and human rights. And women's rights are human rights. Yes. And then later, I was given other areas, and I'll name a few. There was health and education, which are concerns for women, and the docket on women and youth, and the docket on climate change and macroeconomic policy, and the dockets on trade, oceans, and natural resources, as well as deputizing the Secretary General. So I've done a lot of work when it comes to the issues of outreach that's international, and I bring that to the table. Wow, an amazing woman of influence. I cannot even put your experience in my one pager. And thank you so much for making the time to be with us today. and just looking at the work that you have done, and beyond that, looking at even your background, your family background, looking at your mom having gone to Beijing, and now we are seizing that baton from those who have gone before us. We need to surge forward to disrupt the established order. How do you see yourself, especially with a parent who had gone to Beijing? How did that influence you, influence your decisions, and how are you picking that baton from her to actually surge forward?
Thank you. That's a very loaded question. It's loaded because you start off with the centerpiece to my existence, my mother.
Yeah.
I mean, without mothers, what would exist? There'd be no one on this planet. But then she's a very special woman to many in Kenya, as well as special to me. And I want to pay tribute to her resilience and to her ability to mentor decades of women, including our decade as relates to the UN decades that are under review. This particular year when we celebrate 30, Beijing at 30. So my mom has been not only an educator, she was, of course, before us, one of the very few women to gain a PhD at the University of Nairobi, but beyond that, a politician in her own right, ran for office at the grassroots level through universal suffrage, and was appointed one of the first women in cabinet in the history of independent Kenya. And she served 2 years as Assistant Minister for Culture and Social Services. And at that time, women were under social services. The idea that women's empowerment was under social services that day was something that they contended with. Today, we are from women in their own docket. And then after that, she was a minister, Assistant Minister for Education. She continues to run her own political party and is actively involved in managing university education. She has been chair of council, University of Nairobi, and also she works on the National Fund for the Disabled of Kenya. When I go back to those early years, I remember her being in Maendeleo ya Wanawake, and us as younger, very young girls, on the weekends, sitting on the grass and listening to these women as they convened in spaces where they'll be talking about grassroots women's movement and national women's advocacy and policy space. And I remember them telling us that at that time, the word women did not exist in any policy document of the Republic of Kenya. Imagine. But I remembered the unity and the coming together of women from all walks of life across the whole of our country, from every social sector and from every grouping, whether it would be religious, ethnic, or social, based on vocation. And the women would talk about how they would mobilize their numbers to represent and bring presentation on their issues. Such was a background on which, when my mother was the Assistant Minister for Culture and Social Services, that the Beijing conference was held in Kenya. It was 1 decade from the initial Beijing conference in Mexico, and therefore they were looking at 1 decade, so it was called the decade for women. But it was also the Third World Conference on Women, and it was immediately 5 years before the first Beijing conference, so I've located it. I want to say that when that conference opened, the streets of Nairobi were decked with women wearing their traditional regalia. And in fact, this road saw them demonstrate or walk towards KICC on the morning of the opening of the conference in their headgear and their long batiks and wearing their saris and their modern clothing, an army of women.
Yes.
And so that is a background from which we have come. And for them, it was the affirmation of the role of women, empowering women and ensuring gender equity. They made gains. They looked at the 10 years that had passed. When they evaluated them, they said there had been some gains made, but they also noted that there had been some clawback on other gains. But then they put the platform for action in place for the future. And this is a platform that we continue to resonate with over the years. What a joy for Nairobi, what an honor.
Yes.
And then 5 years later, we have Beijing. And they hand on this baton this torch that they've lit for women. And they tell us we have affirmed you in policy documents.
Yes.
We have thrown the gauntlet out about equity,
Yes.
about the legal provisions for women's engagement. Now the space is open for you to perform against those. And so we were handed this role of taking up the baton and moving from affirmation to implementation, and further down the road today to what have we gained to consolidate what the women left us. And how do we program these gains so that they can be delivered at every level of society? And that's why those 6 action items are so important. And so I want to say we are a generation that therefore has had to implement and place at the table of others gains for consolidation. So I want to say I inherited science in the family, and I'm still doing it. It's something that I enjoy very much. But I've also had a taste of leadership.
Yes.
And for me, what I valued most was the being able to convene women, bringing them together around tables where they can discuss their needs and identify what is core to their existence and share that with another woman, and together come to the table and say, we can together build consensus and make representation at other tables so that the affirmation of women continues to be an agenda on the table.
So would you say that the way you're driving change is actually bringing these women together, convening them in a unitary space where they're coming together and they're as well pushing things forward? And in looking at that, at what you have done, what particular impact has those spaces done? Because one of the critical things for this podcast is actually to amplify the voices of women and also amplify or create spaces where we can have conversations. And these conversations can go to the grassroots, can go globally, but really just creating that space, that unitary space. So having been in the space of bringing people together, of making people collaborate, what has been the biggest impact? And do we see a similar thing, either within our spaces, like what we saw 40 years ago, where women were in their saris, they are walking to KICC? Do we see that unity coming back through the collaborative efforts that you're doing? Or what do you see?
Thank you. It's a very interesting question. So as you were speaking, I could see in my mind's eye the Safe Motherhood Initiative of the late 90s and early 2000s. I was a young doctor then, graduated and just done my master's and looking for space. And we were able to mobilize women globally to come to Kenya to participate in the Safe Motherhood Initiative, which looked at delivering health for women around their reproductive role. And for the first time, we talked about the need for education, the need for water, and the need to put the agenda of the health of women on a busk where it would be linked to the other social sectors. So Safe Motherhood Initiative. And again, I saw women in their saris and women in their batiks and women in the modern Western dress in Kenya. So that's one space where we've used the international presence of women to advocate for policy. So policy is a tick. It's a very strong area. So we've had that policy space engaged in one particular space, that's health. But we've also seen policy moved by women, again, engaging in that space for their children. And I want to say that then later on, we saw the women of Kenya adopt and bring home what is now the Children's Act. Very important, because when we speak about young girls, we want to locate legal frameworks where they exist. And I want to say this was a bit of an easier task than some of the things we've done for women. We were able to in a very strategic way, locate the Children's Act and then build laws around the issues of young girls. Let's move forward. Every year we send delegations to New York.
Yes.
And when they reach New York in the spring, because the winter has gone, once again, the women in their regalia march to the UN General Assembly to speak about the progress made since the year before on issues of women's affirmation and gender equity. And that has just taken place, and Kenya was well represented. And we're looking forward to rolling out the gains in a continued manner so that next year we report. And over the last few years, the focus has really been on food systems and security and climate change. And many have spoken about the agrarian economy, as well as begun to buttress their discussions on the green economy and the transitions. So I want to say that there have been landmark conferences to enact policy for women, but there's also been the change in terms of program. And as a result, even GAAF exists as one of the program initiatives. Yes, it does do policy, but it's an initiative that has come out of our overall women's support for their own affirmation. And so looking back, these are many things, but I'll go now a bit more internationally and say one of my great joys when I was at the Commonwealth was to bring the issues of women and political participation to the table. We're still grappling here with the 2/3 gender rule and looking at how we can bring it to life in the numbers of women, in the women's representation. And indeed, the women rep is one of the things we have been able to attain as part of the 2/3 gender rule and the push for women's presence in Parliament. They are indeed charged to make sure that women's issues are legislated. And they need to keep capacitating them to do so. So they do it both at the county level and at national level when they sit together. And so that we get more quality in the debates around the issues of women's concern. So again, here we've made quite a lot of progress. At the Commonwealth, we did so too. We put together a manual to help governments and women in government speak about their political participation, and then push for women in politics through the political party system to have more representation. I was happy when at one point I was in a political party.
Oh, tell us about that.
Oh, wow, to serve as both a gender secretary and for a short time as a secretary general. Actually, I want to say I was one of the very few women to have been elected secretary general from grassroots.
Amazing.
Yes, through a process they call universal suffrage. But the thing was to use that position to affirm other women into politics, to ensure that during party primaries, women would get tickets to run. Women usually are unable to feel themselves in spaces where they can win. So as a Secretary General, yours would be to advise women where their candidature would be most potential. And also to ensure that party policy documents are gender friendly and that party policy organs are responsive to women, and that the engagement with the electoral management body also is friendly to women. So those are the roles that I played as Secretary General for that short period of time. But it's important to see that that period of time also was one where we were able to work with other political parties across the divide as women leaders. And women leaders from our party, and I worked in that old party called KANU.
Yes.
We're able to work.
Jenga
KANU, Mama and Baba. Mama first and Baba.
Wow. Yes.
And we are able to work with other women in other political parties and empower women from the grassroots to join the political space. And we did that, empowering women through the women's leagues and also women in mainstream political party organs. So again, these are spaces where I say there's been some progress, but we need to do more. And then beyond that, I remember a time at the Commonwealth where I was able to work on a program that looked at ending violence against women. And this program looked at ending violence from many perspectives: the legal perspective, the need for education and the social status of women, women and their health status, and then looked at it from the perspective of different governments, from Australia to the Caribbean, different organs, women in Parliament, and what role they could play in ending gender-based violence, women in the disciplined forces, and what role they could play, and then look at it at grassroots and national level. An interesting time was a visit to Fiji, a small island in the Pacific, where you can literally drive from one end to the other in one day if you want. but where you can go to villages.
Yes.
And we found villages engaging in a semi-competition where the village with zero violence would be awarded by the head of state.
Oh, wow.
So the head of state would on
Do
a
you
routine
think we
time
can
visit.
implement it here?
This is why I'm talking about it. It was such a wonderful project to see.
Yes.
And I met women who were chiefs there looking to see that the households were without violence. And he
yes.
put on her tablet that, you know what, I've reached zero violence in my village. And looking forward to when the head of state would come so that they could report that there's peace in our community. For one, there's peace at home. There's usually peace in the community.
Yes, yes.
So that was another thing. And that was not just a focus on women. We would have they had community meetings where they would take the young women and young men, and they would have their corners, speak about their contemporary concerns, whether it was education or employment or lack of it, and how together they could build a more equitable future for themselves. This brings on the need for us to engage men as young men, as boys, and help them grow through their social process.
Yes.
As partners in development with women. I saw that again at the Commonwealth when we worked in Southern Africa and in Malawi in particular,
Yes.
where we were able to address what are the issues in the socialization of men that make them today, what the community is saying, threatened species. Others are saying toxic.
Yes.
And we were able to identify some of the rites of passage for men that force men to feel that they cannot be in touch with their own person, their own soul, their own spirit, their own feelings.
Yeah.
And men have feelings too. And we were able to speak with these men and deconstruct some of the things they went through. Some of them told us of experiences where they were fighting with lions to prove that they were men. And remember, I was asked to be the type A, strong, vigilant, without fear.
Yes.
And as a result, they are not able to engage in other conversations which have a caring and a nurturing perspective very easily. And when that becomes a lifestyle, then they are told that they are overly aggressive, even toxic, and unable to understand the issues of equity. I mean, they deconstructed that with men in the audience, young and old. They're able to see that there are other roles they could play. They could support the nurturing of their children by doing playmates with their children and understanding what children face every day, and support their spouses at home. And this was a very interesting process that I think benefited many in that community. So, on the other hand, it challenged women, modern women, to say, why don't I also share in the roles?
Yeah.
Many women are unable to understand that if you stood back a little and said, you know what, my spouse too can help me with the shopping, the cooking, the nurturing. But indeed, these men are able to do it. Yes.
Yes.
And some of them would want to do it, it's just that they haven't been given the opportunity.
Yes.
The thing is that then, because we are transitioning between a more patriarchal, should I say, society to one where we're talking of equity, that is a space that needs to be nurtured so that the men are comfortable to take on new roles without feeling that they will be vilified by their fellows, men who don't feel the same, and that they can do it with the support of the community. So those are the discussions we've had. And these discussions must be played out because the future, especially the future I saw in the global north, which is rapidly becoming our lifestyle, is that both parties go to work every day. Yes. And getting domestic care is becoming a challenge. And therefore, those domestic roles could be well addressed by some parity.
Yes.
But guess what? If we can have parity at home, we can have the men and women work as partners in the offices.
Indeed. Yes.
In the counties, at national level, in private sector. And it can become a way of life that is better understood.
So just pushing gender equality, not imagining it, but really working together. One party, all parties together, working in tandem with each other.
Precisely. Yes. And so those are the conversations that have been very, very exciting for me. Those are the conversations I've had with women, bringing them to the table, the parliamentarians of the Commonwealth, seeing them in the Caribbean where there's higher rates of gender-based violence, speaking about a different future. Seeing them in the villages in Fiji, talking about a different future. Seeing them in Africa, in Ghana, where I saw women walk towards the gates of their country where they were sold into slavery, speaking of a different future. So there you are.
Yes.
Yes.
Speaking about women supporting affirmations, what do you wish every girl knew about their own potential? Especially in spaces where you have grown through leadership in different countries, you're coming back home, the challenges you see the women face and occupying spaces. What do you wish every girl knew about their own potential and how they can carry themselves along?
You know, girls today feel so inadequate in many spaces. And it's not that they don't have enough education, enough mentorship. I think there are many who can reach out and say, our mentor. Or many girls will tell you they do have mentors today. But it goes back to the identity that they build for themselves, their knowledge of who they are, their self-worth, and the way they live it out, which is their self-esteem. And I think one of the things that I find young girls come to me about is, who will I be? And will I be able to be that person? They see many role models around them, and will I be able to be that? And I keep telling young girls who come to me that you must have a set of values that you embody around where you want to go. But you also need to believe in yourself. You need to believe that you have enough grounding if you have those values. You need to wake up and affirm yourself by repeating them. You need to have them played out in your conversations, in the challenges you meet in the office, in the challenges in society. Repeat those values to yourself. You need to be able to believe that you are worth every challenge, because many times young girls feel that I'm not good enough. They suffer from what we call the imposter syndrome. They feel that, should I be here or should I have been at home? Can I be that leader or should I just be a follower? They need to be encouraged to just put up their hands and say, I'll try.
Yes.
I can do it too. Because all it is that step forward, and that takes you forward to leadership. They need to feel that beyond self-worth, that they can actually engage. And they need to know that on the other side of the table, everybody started in that way. The people that they see who are out there as leaders, they too have moments where they have to stop and ask, am I good enough? But the only thing is that you learn to overcome that voice. You learn to give your best with the quality time you're given. And that people need to, especially young girls, think about just quality and not quantity. As a young girl, when I first got a chance to speak, I remember I put my hand up for so long that when I was given the chance to speak, I was rather angry. Young girls need to know when they're given a space that they can, with a calm, cool composure, make a point and negotiate that space. They need to know that authenticity is so highly valued, and that all these long words and terms are not as important as just expressing yourself. They also need to know that once you've spoken the first time, it's easier the second and the third time. They need to know that people looking at them are not really judging them. In fact, they're excited at the freshness that young people bring to the table. They need to know that if they gather together and build a body, a consensus, that they'll have more pressure. And they also need to know that we value their skills, their AI and connectivity skills, their insights into managing data, their scientific skills, which we are beginning to see that women have in equal quantities as men, their ability to engage with themselves. We value all those skills. So young girls need to know that the future is here and they need to engage.
And just as an addition to that, especially in an environment where we are living in an environment of empowered women and the imposter syndrome, That's in every room that you're entering, there is this aspect, or there's this thing that is always there, empowered women and all that. And I think to some extent it seems as a burden, as opposed to really embracing the ability to rise. Because on one hand, the men are say that men are left behind, and then most of the rooms have empowered women. Does that lead to a space where women really feel they're just imposing in particular spaces?
You know, it's interesting. You're just talking about young girls and the imposter syndrome. It's not limited to them. Even the empowered women feel like they're imposters in certain spaces.
Yes.
And one of the things is that women have many social roles, multiple social roles. So women are always juggling many balls. You're in a meeting and you're thinking it's time to pick up the kids. I don't know if dinner's ready. I didn't buy some meat or some vegetables for the dinner. And so women are carrying these many balls, and when they ask themselves, am I really supposed to be here? Am I missing out on being in hospital with my child who's unwell, who's with the maid? So the imposter syndrome is everywhere. But more than that, one of the things that women who are more able, who have had more resources at their table, need to continue to know is that as you grow through those spaces, more and more you're engaging with men. And that therefore the engagement that women tend to continue to learn because of the male dominance is one that becomes masculine. And in so doing it, with the masculine era of patriarchy and the aggression that goes with that particular space where men are in dominance, women need to be careful not to lose out on engaging with their fellow women. They need to find spaces where the women they were with when they started rising continue to be part of their journey. They need to bring them to the table from time to time and build consensus about what the women still value and about the challenges that they are facing. Because without them, when there are challenges at the higher level, when they look back, these women are too far away, too distanced from this new reality that the woman who is empowered is in, for them to support her. The bridge has been broken. So the need to keep consulting and to continue to gather is important. But on the other hand, the women also need to learn how to reach upwards and utilize the spaces that they're in to advance their agenda without feeling like an imposter, and to bring the women along with them as they journey. That's why the gathering of women is so important.
Yes.
Now, I want to continue to underscore the fact that at every level, it's important to download what you're doing and make it relevant.
Yes.
So that again, the challenge that women face, their achievements, and the futures, such as that in the platform for action, continue to be a concern for all women. A concern in the digital area, a concern for climate justice, a concern for the energy transition, a concern for economics, because economics are practiced in the kitchens as well as at national level, a concern on the issue of disaster management, gender-based violence, and also the bringing together of the young and the adolescent girl is the larger agenda of the Gene Plus 30, the 6 action points, and the +1.
Now, just talking about the 6 action areas, because that is what out of the conference this year, the CSW this year, we have the 6+1 action areas. As a woman of excellence, in what particular area, what legacy do you want to leave, and what particular area of the 6+1 action areas do you want to leave an impact in?
Thank you so much for that question. And thank you for addressing me as a woman of excellence. One of the things I like to embrace, one of the things I like to embrace is my authentic self.
Yeah.
I think that, when we accept that each one of us have flaws, we become not able to understand the women around us, the men around us, and how to move the process forward together. And I think it's that makes us excellent, the fact that we are as natural as possible. Yes, thank you. Yes, I'm in the climate space.
Oh, fantastic.
And right now I'm doing 2 exciting things. I find them very exciting. One might sound hardly technical, but I want to share it. Yes. I'm working on an area called natural hydrogen as a renewable source of energy. Yes. And it seems like this is a very scientific area, but the thing that amazed me last week when we went to launch the Rhino Charge and to launch an electric vehicle that's going to be part of the cars that will be on show and competing, was that when I mentioned natural hydrogen, the women who got up and spoke to me were all women. I was surprised that so many young women are scientists who are networking already on renewable energy.
Amazing.
And they're looking at interfaces where renewable energy can be useful to a woman in her homestead. For me, that was really great. So we're looking at how we can get a cell that we can put into cars that burns longer and gives more power. And of course, has a zero carbon footprint, no emissions. So that's an exciting area, and it's probably the way forward for energy. Then the whole area of the green transitions and the work we're doing in agroforestry. I'm delighted to say I have the honor of working very closely with the current cabinet secretary, Dr. Deborah Baraza, who, like me, comes from an area background in health, but has now moved to the green space. But with her, we're looking at agroforestry and looking at how we can encourage women, young women, mothers, to plant trees, to plant indigenous trees, and in another line, fruit trees, and whether that is mangoes or macadamia and avocado, to plant another line of indigenous trees wherever they are, and then to extract the value from these trees and the fruits and give it back to their homesteads as nutrition, but sell off the surplus. And there they can sell it to make sure that through value chains where women aggregate as numbers, women in their micro and small enterprises, they're able to have these products taken to county level, where at the county industrial parks you can extract the oils from avocado, from macadamia, from cloves, and then bottle these and give them an ISO certification and sustainably market them at a commercial value where the women get money to keep back in their wallets and take back. So that for me is so engaging. And I want to say that many versions of these are out there. We're doing a project with the University of Nairobi. We're doing a project with county governments. But even you're aware that leaders amongst us, including Her Excellency the First Lady, Madam Rachel Ruto, is talking about kitchen gardens and school feeding programs. Again, working in green spaces to improve the livelihood of young children. And we know that when young children have a good meal, they do better in school. The performance will, in the long term, give us a secular change in the way that young people are engaging in productivity spaces in our country. So there's a lot going on in the green space, but I want to say many more women need to put strategic thought into to improve the livelihoods of us all.
It's amazing that in that particular green space that was predominantly, especially when you look at energy transition, was predominantly male-dominated. And actually now you're working very closely with a CS for that particular space, Dr. Bayaza.
Yes.
And with that, there's already a leap forward. I can say there's already a space and a stage for women where they can embrace and run with that particular space. And really now it's to see how that space can be harnessed, especially being led by a woman, and you working with her there. It will be amazing for us to see how that space really, and because it's one of the key action areas of the areas for transitioning women into those particular spaces, it will be very critical for us to see how you're embracing and how the CS is actually championing that for women as we embrace everyone coming together.
Indeed, watch that space. Because I know our current Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry is going to be engaging with women. She's going to go from county to county, helping stir women into planting trees with partners. And she's going to go through churches, through women's groups, and she's going to see how she can work with the women to plant trees. But she's also going to engage in selected groups of women leaders from various regions,
Yes.
in various parliaments, to ensure that they too are not only engaging in planting trees, but also through that improving their own social and economic status.
It will be amazing to see that, especially now moving it into policy level and legislation, where she can be able to engage with women in different governments, in different parliaments, either locally or internationally. It will be really good to actually see that coming to fruition.
And I want to again just let you know she's been doing some exciting work. She's just come back from Geneva, where she's been able to put on the table Kenya's second plan of action for the NDCs, that's climate action. So that's a policy space she's already occupied and is engaging well. She's got some thoughts on sewage and waste management. And as we know, sanitation is one of the daily concerns of women. She's got lots of other policy initiatives she wants to put in place around the health of families and women.
Fantastic. Now, one almost last question. Who owns the future and who should? And especially in the space of, is co-creation the new leadership standard?
It really is. I can't see any other way to do it. We have enough evidence in our hands to plan any program for the future. But if we don't do it with those who are going to live in that future, who are going to be the beneficiaries, it would be meaningless. We need to be sure that at every table we have young people, women and men, girls and boys, seniors and younger people in the same space, talking about designing and then running with the implementation of their future. One of the wonderful things about Kenya is that we love public participation anyway. We are now engaging in the design of policy and legislation, and so I'm sure it will be easy into the future to co-create programs around women's empowerment and gender equality, especially in Beijing +30.
Amazing. Now, because this is Kenya's old global platform, this is your global stage. What one message would you give to unify or to bring for all women and girls, to empower for self-reliance, and generally to bring the whole of society together?
It's difficult to have one message, but let me summarize.
Yes.
Hold hands for a better tomorrow.
Wow. Hold hands for a better tomorrow. And as we sign off for this very first podcast, we do believe that we have actually had a good conversation where we top it up with the fact that united we go far. We go far. And as Dr. Ambassador Josephine Ojiambo has said, hold hands, we go far. One last word from you.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to this celebration of Beijing +30. I know we're going to visit with Beijing and China soon in order that we relive that moment. What's important is let's speak about our challenges in a way where we can empower each other to look for solutions that work for us all. Thank you very much for committing yourselves to a partnership amongst women and men, boys and girls for a better future.
And just to wrap it up, this podcast will be released on Mother's Day.
Oh, how nice. Happy Mother's Day to everyone.
Yes. So a message to the mothers, as we began with the mothers, a message to the mothers would be really good.
I want to tell every mother here that your role is so invaluable. It's a God-given role. It's a role that sometimes causes you to internalize and think deeply about who values you. I want you to know that your value is immeasurable, and that whether you know it or not, everyone on this planet values their mother. I'd like you to know that you are the most precious gift that God has given. Keep doing what you're doing each day. The gift that you give will be returned, if not now, in the future, and in your own heart. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That for us has been authentic impact. as we kick off the For All Women and Girls podcast by NGAAF. And we indeed know that together we are not just imagining equality, we are making it happen, one story, one action, one life at a time. Thank you.